I'm Natalie, 34 years old, standing in my wedding dress as CNN broadcasts my guest list to millions. My sister Rachel is calling frantically, begging for an invitation after excluding me from her wedding 2 years ago. The irony, my nobody wedding has become the most exclusive event of the year. How did I go from family outcast to having world leaders requesting invitations? Before we dive into this incredible journey, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's also dealt with family betrayal? Hit that like button if you believe in karma, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. Trust me, what happens next will show you that sometimes the best revenge is massive success. 2 years ago, my sister Rachel announced her engagement to Christopher, a wealthy investment banker she'd been dating for just 8 months. The family gathered at our parents' house for Sunday dinner, and the champagne was flowing as Rachel flashed her massive diamond ring. As an event coordinator who'd planned hundreds of celebrations, I was genuinely excited to help my only sister create her dream wedding. "Rachel, I'd love to help with the decorations and planning," I offered enthusiastically, already envisioning the perfect color schemes and floral arrangements. The rooms suddenly went quiet. Rachel exchanged a look with our mother Dorothy before responding with a tight smile. "Oh, Natalie, that's sweet, but we're hiring actual professionals for this wedding." The emphasis on actual professionals stung, considering I'd been running my own event planning business for 5 years. Mother immediately jumped in to support Rachel. "Besides, dear, you're still single. You wouldn't really understand what goes into planning a sophisticated wedding like this. Christopher's family has certain expectations." Father Robert, as always, remained silent behind his newspaper, pretending not to hear the casual cruelty being served with dessert. My brother Michael, ever the comedian in the family's eyes, chimed in with his own special brand of support. "Yeah, Nat, your little party planning job is cute, but this is the real deal. We're talking country club, not community center." Over the following weeks, I watched as I was systematically excluded from every aspect of the wedding planning. Rachel held dress shopping trips with Christopher's sisters and her wealthy college friends, posting photos on Instagram with captions like, "My real sister's helping me say yes to the dress." When I asked about bridesmaid dresses, she told me she'd already chosen her bridal party and apologetically explained that Christopher's family had so many people who simply had to be included. The real shock came when the official invitation arrived. I opened the elegant cream envelope with shaking hands, noting the expensive paper and gold embossing. As I read the details, my heart sank. I was invited to the ceremony only, not the reception. There must be some mistake, I thought. I called Rachel immediately. "Oh, about that," she said casually, as if discussing the weather. "The reception is really just for immediate family and close friends. Very intimate. You understand." "But I am immediate family. I'm your sister," I protested, feeling my voice crack. "Well, yes, but it's complicated with Christopher's family and the venue limitations. Only 300 people can fit in the ballroom." 300 people. And somehow there wasn't room for her only sister. Mother backed up this obvious lie with practiced ease. "Darling, don't make a fuss. You know how these things are. The ceremony is the important part anyway." But I knew the truth. Through our cousin Emma, who was invited to the full event, I learned that the family had been spreading rumors about me being unstable and unpredictable ever since my tech startup had failed 6 months earlier. That startup failure had been devastating enough without my family's reaction. I'd invested everything I had into developing an app that connected event planners with local vendors. When it crashed and burned due to a predatory investor pulling out at the last minute, I desperately turned to my family for help. I needed just $5,000 to keep the lights on while I figured out next steps. Their response? Laughter. Literal laughter. Father had said it was a good lesson about playing in the big leagues. Mother suggested I should focus on finding a husband instead of chasing silly dreams. Rachel had posted on social media about how some people just weren't cut out for the business world, clearly referring to me. The wedding day arrived with all the pomp and circumstance money could buy. I arrived at the church early, hoping to at least share a moment with my sister before she walked down the aisle. Security, Actual security guards at a wedding stopped me from entering the bridal suite. Family and bridal party only, they said, checking their list. My name wasn't on it. I was seated in the back row of the church, behind Christopher's work colleagues and Rachel's hairdresser. When it came time for family photos, I started to walk toward the altar, but Rachel's wedding coordinator physically blocked my path. Immediate family only for these shots, she said firmly. I watched from my back row seat as my parents, Michael, and even distant cousins posed for photo after photo with the happy couple. The final insult came during Rachel's reception speech, which I watched from outside the ballroom doors like some Victorian orphan. I'd snuck into the venue, hoping to at least hear the toasts. Rachel raised her champagne glass and said, "Thank you to everyone who matters for being here today. You've all played such important roles in our lives." She looked directly at the doorway where I stood, making eye contact for just a moment before continuing. "Christopher and I are so blessed to be surrounded by people who truly support and believe in us." I left before the security guards could escort me out. As I drove home in my 7-year-old Honda Civic, tears streaming down my face, I promised myself that I would never again beg for a seat at any table. If my own family couldn't see my worth, I'd find people who could. 3 months after Rachel's wedding, I was barely holding it together. The event planning business was struggling, my confidence was shattered, and the family continued to treat me like I was invisible. When a friend offered me a free ticket to a tech innovation conference, I almost didn't go. The last thing I needed was another reminder of my startup failure. But something made me put on my one good blazer and show up. The panel on renewable energy was packed, but I found a seat near the front. The youngest speaker caught my attention immediately, not just because of his passionate presentation about revolutionary battery technology, but because of how he handled the dismissive questions from older audience members. James Chun, introduced as a rising innovator in clean energy, was presenting ideas that seemed to challenge everything the established energy sector believed. During the Q&A session, an older man in an expensive suit stood up and condescendingly asked, "Mr. Chin, don't you think you should gain some real industry experience before trying to reinvent the wheel? Maybe work for an established company first?" I watched James's face carefully. Instead of anger, I saw a flicker of amusement. "Sir, with all due respect, if everyone waited for permission from established companies to innovate, we'd still be riding horses and reading by candlelight. Sometimes the wheel needs to be reinvented by someone who isn't invested in selling the old one." The audience murmured, some impressed, others skeptical. I found myself standing up before I could stop myself. "I have a question," I said, my voice stronger than I'd felt in months. "Your battery technology addresses storage, but how do you plan to handle the infrastructure challenges? The entire grid system would need updating." James's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Excellent question. You're absolutely right that infrastructure is the elephant in the room. We're not just developing batteries. We're creating modular systems that can integrate with existing infrastructure while it's being upgraded. Think of it as building a bridge while you're crossing it." After the panel, James found me in the conference hall. "That was the best question I got all day," he said, extending his hand. "Most people either blindly accept or blindly reject. You actually thought about implementation." Coffee turned into a 4-hour conversation about everything from sustainable technology to our shared experiences as family black sheep. James had walked away from his father's oil company, refusing to be part of what he saw as environmental destruction. His family had cut him off completely, calling him an ungrateful idealist who was throwing away guaranteed wealth for pipe dreams. "The worst part," he said, stirring his third cup of coffee, "is that they see my work in clean energy as a personal attack on them. Like I'm trying to destroy my father's legacy instead of trying to save the planet." I shared my own story, including the fresh wound of Rachel's wedding. James listened without interrupting, his dark eyes showing an understanding that I hadn't found anywhere else. "You know what I've learned?" he said finally. "Sometimes being excluded from the table means you get to build your own table, and you get to decide who sits at it." Within weeks, we were inseparable. It wasn't just romantic attraction, though that was certainly there. It was the recognition of a kindred spirit, someone who understood that family rejection could be both devastating and liberating. When James offered me a position as Strategic Development Director at his company, Green Solutions, I hesitated. "I don't want you to hire me because we're dating," I said honestly. "I'm offering you this job because you have the exact skills we need," he replied. "Your event planning experience means you know how to manage complex projects, coordinate multiple stakeholders, and present ideas in compelling ways. The fact that I'm falling in love with you is just a bonus." My family's reaction to my new job was predictably dismissive. During a mandatory Sunday dinner, Mother shook her head sadly. "Another startup? Natalie, when will you learn?" At least Rachel knew to marry someone with established wealth. Father chimed in with his usual helpful advice. "You're embarrassing the family name, jumping from one failure to the next. And this green energy nonsense? It's just a fad." Michael posted on social media mocking tree huggers and their cute little save-the-world fantasies, clearly directed at me. The post got dozens of likes from family members and family friends. The Thanksgiving disaster came 6 months into my relationship with James. I'd reluctantly agreed to bring him to meet the family, hoping against hope that they might see what I saw in him. The evening started poorly when Rachel, accidentally, spent 20 minutes describing their new yacht, making sure to mention its price tag multiple times. "It's just so wonderful to be financially secure," she said, looking pointedly at James's modest Toyota in the driveway. Christopher says the key to success is joining established industries, not trying to create new ones. When James politely mentioned his recent partnership with a major university for research, Dorothy dismissed it with a wave of her hand. "Oh, how nice. When do you think you'll get a real job?" Natalie does have a tendency to date dreamers. The final straw came when Robert decided to offer career advice. "Son, I could probably get you an entry-level position at my firm. It's not too late to build a respectable career." James remained gracious throughout the meal, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand clenched slightly around his water glass. We left before dessert, making excuses about an early morning meeting. In the car, I started to apologize, but James stopped me. Don't apologize for them. You are nothing like them, Natalie. You're brilliant and kind, and you see possibilities where they see problems." He pulled over on a quiet street overlooking the city lights. "I know this might seem fast, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Natalie Williams, will you marry me? Let's build our own family, one that celebrates dreams instead of crushing them." Through tears of joy, I said yes. We decided on a simple courthouse ceremony, just us and a few close friends who had supported us through everything. When I announced our engagement in the family group chat, the response was immediate and brutal. Rachel texted first, "A courthouse wedding? How classy. Who has courthouse weddings besides people with something to hide or people who can't afford better?" Mother followed with, "Don't expect us to attend that kind of ceremony. When you're ready for a real wedding, let us know." Michael's contribution was a meme about, "When your standards are so low, the courthouse seems fancy." I left the group chat and didn't look back. James and I were building something beautiful together, and we didn't need their approval to do it. 6 months before our planned courthouse wedding, everything changed overnight. James had been working 18-hour days perfecting his revolutionary battery technology, and I'd been by his side, managing partnerships and coordinating with potential investors. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning when James burst into our home office where I was reviewing contracts. "Natalie, we did it. We actually did it." His face was illuminated with a joy I'd never seen before. The latest prototype had exceeded all expectations, solving the critical storage problem that had plagued renewable energy for decades. Within 48 hours, the initial test results were making international headlines. "Revolutionary battery technology could make fossil fuels obsolete," read the Reuters headline. "Young inventor solves renewable energy's biggest challenge," announced the Wall Street Journal. Suddenly, our phones wouldn't stop ringing. Major governments wanted demonstrations. Fortune 500 companies requested meetings. The German Chancellor's office called personally, interested in implementing our technology nationwide. We went from working out of a converted warehouse to fielding calls from world leaders. The invitation to the UN Climate Summit came on official letterhead that I had to read 3 times to believe it was real. They wanted James to present his technology to assembled world leaders and climate scientists. I remember standing in our kitchen, still in my pajamas, as James practiced his presentation for the 15th time. "You're going to change the world," I told him, meaning every word. "We're going to change the world," he corrected, pulling me close. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." At the summit, held in a glass palace overlooking Lake Geneva, we found ourselves in conversations I'd only dreamed about. The German Chancellor spent an hour discussing implementation strategies with James while I coordinated with her staff on pilot programs. Prince William pulled us aside during a break to discuss bringing our technology to Commonwealth nations. Tech billionaires who'd previously ignored our funding requests were now competing to invest. "Your husband is brilliant," the CEO of a major tech company told me during the gala dinner. I didn't correct him about the husband part, just smiled and said, "Yes, he is." But the moment that truly changed our trajectory came when I found myself in an unexpected conversation with Clara Madison, the president's daughter. She'd approached me during a cocktail reception, introducing herself with a warmth that immediately put me at ease. "I've been following your work," she said, which surprised me. "Not just the technology, but how you've built this company. You and James did this without family money, without connections, without the traditional backing that most of us rely on." We talked for hours that evening, finding unexpected common ground. Clara, despite her privileged position, was also considered the black sheep of her family for refusing to follow the expected political path. She'd chosen environmental law instead, much to her parents' initial disappointment. "You know what's funny?" she said, sipping her champagne. "My parents spent years being embarrassed by my choices. Now that climate change is the issue of our time, suddenly I'm the wise one. Families are weird like that." When she asked about our wedding plans, I tried to brush it off casually. "Oh, just a small courthouse ceremony next month. We're not really wedding people." Clara's eyes narrowed perceptively. "That's not the whole story, is it? Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was the relief of talking to someone who understood complicated family dynamics, but I found myself telling her everything. Rachel's wedding, the exclusion, the mockery of our engagement, all of it came pouring out. "So you're having a courthouse wedding because your family made you feel like you don't deserve a real celebration?" Clara's voice was gentle but firm. "Natalie, you're literally changing the world. You and James deserve to celebrate your love properly." "It's not about deserving," I protested. "We just don't see the point in a big wedding when the people who should be happy for us won't even attend." Clara was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "What if I told you that you could have the wedding of your dreams surrounded by people who actually support and celebrate you? What if your guest list could be filled with people who see your worth?" That conversation planted a seed that would grow into something extraordinary. Over the following weeks, as James's company valuation soared into the billions and our technology began pilot programs in 12 countries, Clara and I became close friends. She insisted on helping plan what she called the wedding you actually deserve. The irony wasn't lost on me that while my own family continued to mock our little green energy play on social media, we were having dinner at the White House to discuss America's energy independence strategy. The president himself raised a toast to the future of American innovation, while my mother was posting passive-aggressive quotes about children who forget where they came from. During one particularly memorable evening, the German chancellor told us about her own journey from physicist to world leader. "The people who doubt you in the beginning," she said wisely, "are rarely the ones who celebrate you at the end. But the ones who believe in you when you have nothing, those are the people worth keeping." 3 major tech billionaires approached us that month with offers to fund not just our company, but our entire wedding. "Consider it an investment in happiness," one said with a wink. "Happy innovators create better solutions." We politely declined the wedding funding but accepted strategic investments that valued Energreen Solutions at $50 billion seemingly overnight. James insisted on maintaining majority control, remembering the lessons from my failed startup. "We're not just building a company," he said during one board meeting. "We're building a legacy, and legacies aren't for sale." Meanwhile, my family remained blissfully unaware of our transformation. They were too busy celebrating Rachel's latest shopping spree and Michael's promotion to middle management to notice that the family disappointment was negotiating with world leaders. The last text I received from my mother before blocking her number was a forwarded article about why most startups fail with the message, "Thought you should see this, honey. It's not too late to find a stable job." If only she knew that we'd just secured a contract that would bring clean energy to 10,000 villages across Southeast Asia. But then again, even if she knew, would she care? Or would she find a way to diminish that too? 3 weeks before our wedding, I was sitting in our home office with Clara, reviewing what had started as a simple guest list and had evolved into something extraordinary. James's assistant knocked on the door with an expression of barely contained panic. "There's been a leak," she said, holding up her tablet. "Someone sent your wedding guest list to Cian." My heart stopped as I grabbed the device and read the breaking news alert. The most exclusive wedding guest list in history. Tech billionaire couple invites world leaders, snubs own families. The article detailed our carefully curated list of 150 guests, reading like a who's who of global influence. The president and first family, the German chancellor, Prince William and Catherine, 3 Nobel laureates, the CEOs of the world's most innovative companies, climate scientists who were changing the world, and notably, pointedly absent, the Williams and Chin families. Within minutes, my phone exploded with calls and texts. The first voicemail was from Rachel, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "How could you not invite your own sister? Do you know how this makes me look? Everyone is calling me asking why I'm not invited to the wedding of the century. This is MY's sister's wedding, and I'm finding out about it on Cian." I called her back, if only to stop the barrage of increasingly hysterical messages. She answered on the first ring. "Natalie, what is wrong with you?" she shrieked without preamble. "Mother is devastated. Father is humiliated. The entire country club is talking about how we're not invited to our own daughter's wedding." "The way you didn't invite me to your reception?" I asked calmly. "The way you seated me in the back row and had security keep me out of family photos?" "That was completely different," Rachel sputtered. "That was about venue limitations and Christopher's family obligations. This is just vindictive."
No, Rachel.
Vindictive was telling 300 guests that everyone who mattered was there while looking directly at me. Vindictive was spreading rumors about my mental stability when my startup failed. This is just choice. I'm choosing to surround myself with people who celebrated my success instead of betting on my failure. She hung up on me, but the calls kept coming. Mother's tears were perfectly timed for maximum guilt. "After everything we've done for you, Natalie, we're your family. Family forgives each other. How can you do this to us?" "Everything you've done for me?" I repeated incredulously. Like laughing when I begged for help? Like calling my career a cute hobby? Like treating James like hired help when he came to dinner? "We were just trying to protect you from disappointment," she wailed. "We didn't want you to get hurt chasing impossible dreams." "No, Mother. You were protecting yourselves from the embarrassment of having a daughter who might fail." "Well, guess what? I didn't fail. And you don't get to claim credit for success you never believed in." Father's approach was different, threats delivered in his stern businessman voice. "I'll disown you, Natalie. You'll be dead to this family." "I thought I already was," I replied before hanging up. Michael, predictably, took to social media with a vengeance. He started a hashtag, Family First, posting old photos of us as children with captions about how success changes people and money can't buy class. His followers, mostly family friends and Rachel's circle, ate it up. The extended relatives crawled out of the woodwork like roaches when the lights turn on. Aunt Linda, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, suddenly remembered how she'd always believed in my potential. Uncle Terry, who told me I was wasting my education on event planning nonsense, called to remind me that families should forgive each other. The most pathetic call came from Christopher, Rachel's husband, who tried to reach James directly when I wouldn't take his calls. James put him on speaker, so I could hear. "James, buddy, I know the women have their drama, but we're practically brothers now, right?" Christopher's voice oozed false charm. "I've got this investment opportunity that would be perfect for your company. Just need a small injection of capital, maybe 10 million to start." James's response was perfectly professional. "Christopher, I don't mix business with personal relationships. I'm sure you understand." "But we're family," Christopher protested. "No," James said firmly. "We're not." The media frenzy intensified when Rachel made the catastrophic decision to confront me at my office building. Our security team called me when she showed up in the lobby, demanding to be let upstairs. "Ma'am, you're not on the approved visitor list," the guard explained patiently. "I'm her sister," Rachel screamed, loud enough for everyone in the marble lobby to hear. "I don't need to be on some list. This is MY Family's building." "Ma'am, this is Green Solutions building, and you're not authorized to enter." What Rachel didn't realize was that several journalists were in the lobby, having just finished interviewing James about our latest international expansion. They filmed every second of her meltdown. "She stole this from me," Rachel ranted to anyone who would listen. "My wedding was supposed to be the event everyone remembered. She was nobody. Nobody. And now she thinks she's better than us because she got lucky?" The video went viral within hours. Bridezilla sister started trending. The comments were brutal but honest. So she excluded her sister first, and now she's mad about payback? Karma is a beautiful thing. Imagine being this pressed about someone else's success. The leaked guest list also revealed something we hadn't intended to publicize. We turned our wedding into a charity event. Every guest was required to donate a minimum of $100,000 to our newly established foundation for bringing renewable energy to developing nations. In less than 2 weeks, we'd raised $50 million. Clara handled the media response brilliantly. Natalie and James Williams-Chin are using their personal celebration to create global change. While some may focus on who wasn't invited, we prefer to celebrate the incredible impact of those who were. The narrative in respectable media outlets began to shift. Investigative journalists dug into the family dynamics, uncovering social media posts and witnesses to years of treatment I'd endured. Emma, bless her heart, went on record with a major newspaper. "I watched that family tear Natalie down for years," she said. "When her startup failed, they literally celebrated. Rachel made jokes about it at Christmas dinner. When Natalie asked for a $5,000 loan to save her company, they bought Rachel a new car instead. The same month. So no, I don't blame her for not inviting people who bet against her." Former employees of my event planning business came forward with their own stories. Natalie's mother would call the office and tell us we were wasting our time working for a hopeless dreamer, one revealed. Her sister would book consultations just to waste Natalie's time and then hire someone else. 3 days before the wedding, my family attempted one last desperate manipulation. They organized what they called an intervention at my parents' house, demanding my presence to sort this out like adults. Against James's advice, but with my lawyer and security team, I agreed to go. The entire extended family was there, arranged in the living room like some kind of tribunal. Uncle Richard, the family pastor, had been brought in for spiritual authority. "Natalie," he began in his preaching voice, "the Bible tells us to honor our father and mother. It speaks of forgiveness and family unity. It also speaks of reaping what you sow," I replied evenly. Rachel stood up dramatically. "You're destroying this family. Mother can't sleep. Father's blood pressure is through the roof. Is your revenge worth killing your parents?" I pulled out my phone and played a recording I'd saved from Rachel's wedding. Her voice filled the room. "Thank you to everyone who matters for being here today." I let it play through to the end, including the part where she looked directly at me while emphasizing, "Everyone who matters." The room fell silent. "Our wedding has raised $50 million for charity," I said quietly. "It's bringing clean energy to villages that don't have electricity. It's creating jobs and saving lives." That's what matters to me now. Not the opinions of people who celebrated my failures and resent my success. I stood to leave, then turned back one last time. You're right about one thing, though. Family is important. That's why I'm so careful about who I consider family now. As we drove away, my lawyer mentioned that she'd never seen a family so thoroughly destroy their own argument. They basically made your case for you, she said. But I didn't feel victorious. Just sad that it had come to this. The 3 days before our wedding became a masterclass in how not to handle public humiliation. My family, having failed in their private manipulations, decided to take their grievances public in increasingly desperate ways. It started with Mother's fake health scare. She posted a photo of herself in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors with the caption, "When your own daughter's cruelty breaks your heart literally." The post was shared hundreds of times by family friends and Rachel's network, all offering prayers and condemning the heartless daughter who abandoned her poor mother. Within hours, a nurse from that very hospital reached out to me privately. She'd been following our story and couldn't stand the deception. "Your mother was never admitted," she confirmed. "She came to the ER complaining of chest pains. We ran every test, and everything came back normal." She insisted on taking photos before being discharged. The monitors in the photo weren't even connected. I didn't expose Mother publicly, but I didn't need to. Enterprising journalists fact-checked the story themselves, discovering that the hospital had no record of Dorothy Williams being admitted that week. The backlash was swift and merciless. "Faking heart attack for sympathy. How low can they go?" read one particularly scathing headline. Father took a different approach, penning what he called an open letter to my ungrateful daughter that he somehow got published in a minor business publication. In it, he painted himself as a devoted father who'd sacrificed everything for his children, only to be betrayed by a daughter corrupted by wealth and success. He conveniently omitted every instance of belittlement, every refused request for help, every cruel comment about my failed dreams. The letter backfired spectacularly when several of his former business associates came forward with their own stories. Robert Williams once told me he was ashamed of his older daughter, one revealed. This was before her success. He said she was an embarrassment who couldn't even find a husband. Another shared emails where my father had explicitly stated he was done wasting money on Natalie's pipe dreams. But Michael's attempted documentary was perhaps the most pathetic effort. Titled Betrayed, A Brother's Story, it was meant to be a heart-wrenching expose of how success had changed me. He interviewed family members, Rachel's friends, and even some actors he hired to play former friends of mine who'd been abandoned when I became wealthy. The trailer alone destroyed his credibility. Real documentary filmmakers analyzed it and found obvious inconsistencies, hired actors who were recognized from other projects, and timeline errors that placed supposed events before James and I had even met. When someone leaked behind-the-scenes footage of Michael coaching an actor on how to cry more convincingly while talking about my betrayal, it became a meme. Michael's fake tears challenge trended for days. Throughout this media circus, legitimate journalists were doing actual investigative work. A major network produced a segment called The Family That Cried Abandonment, featuring interviews with dozens of people who'd witnessed my family's treatment of me over the years. My high school guidance counselor came forward. Natalie was accepted to MIT. Her parents refused to co-sign loans because they said college was wasted on girls who'd just get married anyway. She went to state school and worked 3 jobs. My first business partner revealed, when we were starting the event planning company, Natalie's family would actively discourage our clients. Her mother once told a bride that hiring us would ruin her wedding. The most damning testimony came from Christopher's own business associates. As news of our wedding dominated headlines, they began distancing themselves from him. His firm was already struggling, but the negative publicity accelerated its downfall. One partner publicly stated, Christopher Daniels spent more time trying to leverage his tangential connection to the Williams-Chin family than actually working. He seemed to think marrying into that family entitled him to investment opportunities. The week of our wedding, Christopher's firm officially filed for bankruptcy. Worse for him, investigators found evidence of financial misconduct that had nothing to do with us, but everything to do with his own poor management and possible embezzlement. Rachel, predictably, blamed us for orchestrating their downfall. She showed up at our house with moving trucks, claiming they were now homeless and demanding we take them in. "You've destroyed our lives," she screamed at our security gate. "The least you can do is give us shelter." James handled it with more grace than I could muster. He spoke to them through the intercom. "Rachel, Christopher's business failures are not our responsibility. Neither is housing you. There are hotels if you need temporary accommodation." "I'm her sister," Rachel wailed, seemingly forgetting that she'd spent years acting like I didn't exist. "Yes," James replied calmly. "And you were her sister when you excluded her from your wedding reception. When you mocked her failures. When you tried to humiliate her in front of me. Being family isn't a magical ticket to forgiveness. It's a responsibility you failed to honor." She posted a video of herself crying outside our gates, playing the victim. But by then, public opinion had shifted completely. The comments were ruthless. "You excluded her first. Karma doesn't care about your tears. Maybe treat people better when they're down instead of crying when they're up." The extended family's attempts to cash in on our success became increasingly transparent. Cousin Bradley, who'd once told me that poor people shouldn't try to play entrepreneur, suddenly remembered how he'd always believed in my vision. He pitched no fewer than 7 business ideas that week, each more ridiculous than the last. Aunt Patricia, who'd called me the family disappointment at every gathering for 5 years, sent a heartfelt letter about how family supports family, along with a subtle mention of her son's tuition needs. She seemed to forget that when I'd asked for family support, she'd suggested I try waitressing since it was more stable than these fancy dreams. Even Pastor Uncle Richard joined the grift, proposing that our foundation donate to his church's definitely real and not just created yesterday renewable energy initiative. When we had our lawyers look into it, the initiative consisted of nothing more than a hastily made website and a bank account in his name. 3 days before the wedding, the situation reached peak absurdity when my parents attempted to claim legal rights to attend. They actually consulted a lawyer about whether they could sue for emotional damages caused by exclusion from their daughter's wedding. The lawyer, probably trying not to laugh, explained that wedding invitations were not legally mandated for anyone, including family. The legal threat made national news, with law professors using it as an example of frivolous litigation. One Harvard law professor wrote an op-ed titled, "No, You Can't See Your Way into a Wedding," which became required reading in several legal ethics classes. Michael's girlfriend of 3 years left him very publicly, posting a breakup message that went viral. "Watching how you've treated your sister when she's happy has shown me who you really are. Your bitterness and vindictiveness are not qualities I want in a partner. I hope you learn to celebrate other people's success instead of trying to tear them down." My parents' country club formally requested they cease discussing family matters on the premises after multiple complaints from other members. The social circle they'd tried so hard to impress was now actively avoiding them. Rachel was disinvited from several charity committees she'd clawed her way onto, with one chair privately telling her, "Your behavior has become a liability to our organization's reputation." By the morning of our wedding, my family had managed to destroy their own reputations more thoroughly than I ever could have. Their escalating attempts to paint themselves as victims had only highlighted their own cruel behavior. Every lie they told was fact-checked. Every manipulation was exposed. Every crocodile tear was mocked. The final irony came in a group email from Father the night before the wedding. "Despite everything, we're willing to forgive you and attend the wedding if you apologize publicly and donate half the charity funds to a family trust." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The morning of our wedding dawned clear and bright, with a kind of perfect weather that felt like divine approval. Our estate had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale, but with a modern, sustainable twist. Solar panels disguised as art installations powered the entire event. The flowers were all locally sourced from farms we'd helped convert to renewable energy. Even the furniture was made from recycled materials by artisans from the villages our foundation supported. Media helicopters circled overhead, trying to get glimpses of the arrival of world leaders and celebrities. Our security team, headed by former Secret Service agents, had created an impenetrable but elegant barrier. Guests arrived through a single checkpoint where their donations to our foundation were verified and celebrated on a digital display showing the real-time impact. Your contribution just brought electricity to 50 homes in Bangladesh. Clara arrived early, radiant in her role as my maid of honor. She found me in the bridal suite, where I was having a moment of quiet reflection. "You know," she said, adjusting my veil, "most brides worry about flower arrangements or seating charts. You're sitting here having changed the world and given thousands of people electricity for the first time. I just wish," I started, then stopped myself, "that your family could see you for who you really are." Clara finished gently. "Natalie, they do see you. That's why they're so angry. They see that you succeeded without them, despite them. And that's what they can't forgive." The ceremony space was intimate despite the global attention. We'd limited it to 150 people who had genuinely supported our journey. James's aunt and uncle, who'd mortgaged their house to help him start his company when his parents cut him off. My college roommate who'd let me crash on her couch during the worst of my startup failure. The professors who'd believed in our research when everyone called it impossible. These were our people. As guests took their seats, each found a handwritten note thanking them for their specific contribution to our lives. The German chancellor later told me she'd cried reading hers, which recalled how her early encouragement had kept us going during a particularly difficult period. The security team informed me of a complication just as the ceremony was about to begin. My family had arrived at the gates, with Rachel wearing a white dress, demanding entry. They'd brought local news crews, hoping to create a scene that would overshadow the wedding itself. "Let me handle this," James said, squeezing my hand. But I shook my head.
No.
"I need to do this myself. But I won't let them ruin our day." I asked security to set up a video call to the gate. My family appeared on the screen, Rachel front and center in a wedding dress that looked more expensive than the one she'd worn to her own wedding. My parents flanked her, trying to look tragic for the cameras. "Natalie," Rachel began, her voice pitched for maximum drama. "On this day of love and forgiveness, won't you open your heart to your family?" "Rachel," I said calmly, "you're wearing white to my wedding. You brought news crews to what you know is a private event. You're trying to make my wedding day about you, just like you've tried to make everything about you. So no, I won't open the gates. But I do forgive you." Her face went slack with shock. "You what?" "I forgive all of you," I continued. "I forgive you for the years of belittlement, for celebrating my failures, for trying to dim my light to make yourselves feel brighter. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, and I have too much joy in my life to waste energy on resentment." Mother started to speak, but I cut her off. "Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean you get to be part of my life. It just means I'm free. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to attend. My real family is waiting." I ended the call and turned to find our entire wedding party watching with tears in their eyes. Clara hugged me tightly. That was the most elegant dismissal I've ever witnessed. The ceremony itself was performed by Dr. Amelia Richardson, the Nobel laureate whose research on climate change had inspired James's work. Her words weren't about love conquering all or fairy tale endings, but about two people choosing to build something meaningful together despite the obstacles. "James and Natalie," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd, "have proven that the families we choose can be more powerful than the ones we're born into. They've shown that rejection can be redirection, that exclusion can lead to innovation, and that the best revenge against those who bet against you is to succeed beyond their wildest dreams." Our vows were personal and specific. James promised to always see my worth, especially on days when I couldn't see it myself. I promised to stand by his dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed to others. We both promised to create a family based on support, encouragement, and unconditional acceptance. As we exchanged rings, both made from recycled metals from our first laboratory equipment, the president leaned over to his wife and whispered something that was caught on camera and later shared widely. Now that's how you turn pain into purpose. The reception was a celebration not just of our love, but of what's possible when people support each other's dreams. Every speech told a story of transformation. The German chancellor spoke about how our technology was already reducing her country's carbon emissions by 30%. A village elder from Bangladesh, connected via satellite, thanked us for bringing light to his community for the first time in history. The president's speech was particularly memorable. In a world where we often celebrate those who tear others down, James and Natalie Williamson remind us that lifting others up is the ultimate success. They've chosen to use their platform not for revenge, but for revolution. They've turned their wedding into a movement, their pain into purpose, their exclusion into inclusion for millions who've never had access to basic electricity. During the reception, my phone buzzed with a notification I couldn't ignore. Christopher had sent Rachel divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences. But the real shock was his public statement. I've realized through this experience that I'm married into a family that values appearances over authenticity, cruelty over kindness. Natalie's grace in the face of our treatment has shown me what real class looks like. I apologize for my part in the pain we caused. Rachel's public meltdown on social media in response to the divorce papers became the secondary entertainment of the evening. She accused me of stealing her husband's loyalty, apparently forgetting that she'd brought him to publicly crash my wedding just hours earlier. Michael's response was even more pathetic. His documentary, which he'd rushed to release to coincide with our wedding, premiered to empty theaters and scathing reviews. One critic called it a masterclass in how not to handle sibling jealousy, and another simply wrote, "This is what bitterness looks like on film." My parents aged years in the hours they stood at our gates. Photos showed them gradually deflating as they realized the media attention they'd courted was turning against them. By the time they left, even their hired photographers had put down their cameras, unwilling to continue documenting what one called the saddest display of entitlement I've ever seen. As the evening wound down, James and I took a moment to ourselves on the balcony, overlooking the celebration. Below us, world leaders chatted with village elders who'd been flown in to share how our technology had changed their lives. Scientists debated solutions with artists. Former rivals collaborated on new ideas. This was what family looked like when you got to choose it. Any regrets? James asked, wrapping his arms around me. I thought about it honestly.
No.
I wish things could have been different with my birth family, but if they'd supported me from the beginning, would we have worked so hard to prove ourselves? Would we have built this incredible network of people who actually believe in changing the world? Clara joined us on the balcony, champagne in hand. So, I have news. The foundation received another $50 million in donations during the reception. Apparently, your story inspired people to contribute even if they couldn't attend. Oh, and Reuters wants to do a feature on the wedding that changed the world. We laughed, the kind of deep, genuine laughter that comes from surviving something difficult and emerging stronger. Below us, our chosen family celebrated not just our union, but the proof that you can build something beautiful from the ashes of other people's doubts. The wedding that went worldwide had never been about revenge. It had been about revelation, showing that when you're excluded from one table, you can build a bigger one. And when you fill that table with people who see your worth, magic happens. 6 months after our wedding, I sit in the nursery we've prepared for our daughter, due in just 3 weeks, and marvel at how dramatically life can change when you stop seeking approval from people incapable of giving it. The room is painted in soft greens and golds, with a mobile of tiny solar panels that actually powers the room's nightlight, a gift from the German Chancellor's grandchildren. Our foundation has exceeded every projection we dared to make. 10,000 villages across Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America now have reliable electricity for the first time in history. Children can study after dark. Medical clinics can refrigerate vaccines. Small businesses can operate beyond daylight hours. The ripple effects are immeasurable. James's company, now valued at $50 billion, has become the global leader in renewable energy storage. But more than the financial success, it's the human impact that fills us with purpose. Every day, we receive videos from communities experiencing electric light for the first time. Elderly people seeing their grandchildren clearly after dark. Students able to complete homework. Midwives able to deliver babies safely at night. This is what success looks like when it's not just about profit but purpose. Rachel's life has taken a starkly different trajectory. The divorce from Christopher was finalized last month, and the proceedings revealed the depth of their financial troubles. Without Christopher's income and with her reputation in tatters, she's been forced to move back in with our parents. She recently started working at a local real estate office, posting motivational quotes about rising from the ashes and new beginnings, without a trace of self-awareness about how she ended up there. Christopher, to his credit, sent a genuine letter of apology last month. He's rebuilding his life and career with humility, acknowledging that marrying for status instead of love and treating family as stepping stones instead of support systems had led to his downfall. We've exchanged a few cordial emails, and while we'll never be close, I appreciate his growth. Michael's attempts to salvage his reputation have been painful to watch. His documentary became a case study in several film schools, but not in the way he'd hoped. It's now used as an example of how personal bias destroys credibility and the dangers of manufactured narrative. His girlfriend never came back, and his social media presence has dwindled to motivational quotes and workout videos. He recently started therapy, according to Emma, who keeps me loosely informed about family matters. My parents have aged dramatically. The country club they valued so highly quietly revoked their membership after too many complaints about Dorothy cornering members to share her side of the story. They've become cautionary tales in their social circle, whispered about at gatherings they're no longer invited to. The house that once hosted grand parties now sits quiet, with only their bitterness for company. Last week, Mother sent a letter through her lawyer. Not directly to me, of course. That would require admitting she had my address. The letter was formal, stiff, and somehow still managed to be manipulative. She requested permission to meet her grandchild, claiming she'd learned her lesson and understood the error of her ways. I drafted several responses before settling on the truth. The guest list for my life is very exclusive. It includes only those who loved me when I had nothing, who believed in me when I was struggling, who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. That list was finalized years ago, and your names were removed by your own choices. The lawyer informed us that she'd cried upon reading it. Father had reportedly stormed out of the office. But tears and anger don't undo years of cruelty. They don't erase the memories of being mocked, dismissed, excluded. They don't rebuild bridges burned with such enthusiasm. Our chosen family, on the other hand, continues to grow and thrive. Clara is expecting her own child, due a month after ours. We joke that they'll be built-in best friends, but honestly, I love the idea of our children growing up surrounded by people who understand that family is about choice, not chromosomes. She'll be their aunt in every way that matters. The impact of our wedding continues to ripple outward. 3 other high-profile couples have followed our model, turning their weddings into charity events that raised millions for various causes. The phrase, pulling a Williams chin, has entered the lexicon, meaning to turn a personal celebration into a force for global good. Universities now use our story in business ethics classes as an example of transforming personal pain into public purpose. Just yesterday, a young woman reached out through our foundation. She'd been excluded from her brother's wedding for being gay, and her family had cut her off completely. She'd seen our story and wanted to know how to move forward. I spent an hour on the phone with her, sharing what I'd learned. That sometimes the family you're born into is just the starting point, not the destination. That rejection can be protection from people who would dim your light. That success isn't about proving them wrong, but about proving yourself right. James found me after that call, emotional and reflective. You've become the person you needed when you were hurting, he said. And he's right. Every time we help someone else who's been rejected by family, every time our foundation brings light to a dark place, every time we choose hope over bitterness, we heal a little more. As I finish writing this reflection, our daughter kicks, reminding me of the future we're building. She'll grow up in a house filled with love, surrounded by people who celebrate achievements and support through failures. She'll know her worth isn't determined by others' opinions, but by her own character and choices. She'll understand that family isn't about blood, but about bonds. The wedding that went worldwide was never about the famous guests or the media attention. It was about declaring publicly that we refuse to let others' limitations become our own. It was about choosing joy over bitterness, purpose over pettiness, and love over the kind of toxic loyalty that demands you shrink yourself to fit others' comfort. Recently, a journalist asked if I ever regret excluding my birth family from our wedding and, by extension, our lives. I told them the truth. I regret that they made it necessary. I regret that they chose cruelty over kindness, mockery over support, exclusion over inclusion. But I don't regret protecting my peace, choosing my circle, or building a life surrounded by people who see celebrations as opportunities to lift others up, not tear them down. Our story has resonated with millions because it's not really about a wedding or even about family drama. It's about the universal human experience of seeking belonging and the powerful realization that sometimes you have to create what you can't find. It's about understanding that rejection from the wrong people is often redirection toward the right ones. To those who've asked how to handle similar situations, my advice is this: stop watering dead plants hoping they'll bloom. Stop seeking approval from people who've shown you repeatedly that they're incapable of giving it. Stop dimming your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. Instead, build your own table. Fill it with people who celebrate your victories and comfort you in defeats. Create the family you deserve, not the one you were assigned. The wedding that went worldwide changed our lives, but not in the way the media portrayed. Yes, we gained wealth and influence, but more importantly, we gained clarity about what really matters. We learned that the best response to being excluded is to build something so beautiful, so meaningful, so filled with love and purpose that the exclusion becomes a gift in retrospect. As James often says, they accidentally did us the biggest favor by showing us who they really were before we wasted any more time trying to earn their approval.
He's right.
Their rejection redirected our energy toward people and purposes that actually matter. Their exclusion became our invitation to build something extraordinary. Our daughter will never question her worth because others will never determine it. She'll grow up knowing that love isn't conditional on achievement, that support isn't withdrawn during failure, and that family shows up for the small moments as much as the big ones. The cycle of conditional love, manipulation, and cruelty ends with us. That's the real inheritance we're leaving behind. The knowledge that you can choose your family, create your future, and transform your pain into purpose. The wedding that went worldwide was just the beginning. The life we're building, surrounded by chosen family and united in purpose, is the real happy ending. To anyone reading this who's been excluded, rejected, or told they're not enough by people who should love them unconditionally, know this: their rejection isn't about your worth. It's about their limitations. Build your own table. Create your own guest list. Write your own story. And when you do, fill it with people who see your light and help it shine brighter, not those who try to dim it to match their own darkness. The universe has a way of removing the wrong people to make room for the right ones. Sometimes exclusion is protection. Sometimes rejection is redirection. And sometimes the family that excludes you from their table is doing you the favor of forcing you to build your own banquet hall. That's what we did. And from where I sit now, surrounded by love, purpose, and people who've shown us what family really means, I can honestly say, thank you for excluding me. It was the push I needed to stop settling for crumbs and start building my own feast. What has been your experience with family expectations versus personal dreams? Have you ever had to choose between approval and authenticity? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a community of people who understand that sometimes the best family is the one you choose. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about turning life's challenges into triumphs. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' opinions. Together, we can redefine what family means and create circles of support that celebrate our authentic selves. Thank you for being part of our chosen family here on this channel. Until next time, remember, you can't control who appreciates your worth, but you can control who you allow into your life. Choose wisely, love freely, and build fearlessly. Your true family is waiting to celebrate the real you.